When 85-year-old Mary Johnson was taking her final breath, she held her family close and whispered, "You don't need to keep Elvis's secret anymore." That night, the story Mary told proved that Elvis was far more than his public image. He was a monument to humanity that had quietly shaped 3 generations of one family's life. Memphis in the summer of 1973 buzzed with the energy that only the king of rock and roll's hometown could possess. The city streets hummed with music flowing from every corner, and the warm southern air carried the scent of barbecue and the sound of blues guitars. For the Johnson family, however, that particular summer felt different from any they had experienced before. Robert Johnson, a 34-year-old factory worker, had been struggling to make ends meet since the plant where he worked reduced hours due to economic difficulties. His wife, Mary, worked as a seamstress from their small apartment, taking in alterations and repairs to supplement their meager income. Their 3 children, 12-year-old Sarah, 8-year-old Michael, and 5-year-old little Emma, had learned to accept hand-me-down clothes and simple meals without complaint. The family lived in a modest neighborhood just outside downtown Memphis, where most families face similar financial challenges. The houses were small but well-maintained, with front porches where neighbors gathered in the evenings to share stories and support each other through difficult times. It was a community built on mutual respect and the understanding that everyone was working hard to build better lives for their children. On this particular evening in late July, the Johnson family found themselves in an unexpected situation that would change their lives forever. Robert had been walking home from his shift at the factory when he noticed smoke billowing from their apartment building. Racing toward his home, his heart pounding with fear for his family's safety, he arrived to find fire trucks surrounding the building and residents evacuating their belongings. Mary stood on the sidewalk with their 3 children, watching helplessly as flames consumed the top floor of their building. While their apartment on the 2nd floor had escaped the worst of the fire damage, smoke and water damage had destroyed most of their possessions. The family's few valuable items, Mary's sewing machine, the children's school clothes, and the small savings they had managed to accumulate, were all lost in the chaos. As the Johnson family stood on the sidewalk that evening, trying to process what had just happened to their lives, a sleek black Cadillac pulled up to the curb. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a face that every person in Memphis would have recognized instantly: Elvis Presley himself. Elvis had been driving through the neighborhood after visiting friends when he noticed the commotion and the displaced families gathered on the street. Something about the scene touched his heart deeply, particularly when he saw the Johnson children clinging to their parents, their eyes wide with confusion and fear about what would happen next. Without hesitation, Elvis parked his car and stepped out onto the sidewalk. He was dressed casually in dark pants and a simple shirt, but his presence was unmistakable. Several neighbors recognized him immediately and began whispering among themselves, but Elvis's attention was focused entirely on the families who had been affected by the fire. He approached Robert and Mary Johnson with the same warm, genuine manner that had endeared him to millions of fans around the world. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice carrying the distinctive Southern accent that had become his trademark. "I couldn't help but notice what happened here. Is everyone safe?" Robert, still in shock from the events of the evening, nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. Everyone got out okay. We lost everything we had." His voice cracked slightly as the reality of their situation began to sink in. Mary stood beside him, holding little Emma, while Sarah and Michael pressed close to their parents for comfort. Elvis listened carefully as Robert explained their situation, how they had rented the apartment for 5 years, how Mary's sewing machine had been their primary source of supplemental income, and how they had no idea where they would stay or how they would replace their belongings. Throughout the conversation, Elvis maintained steady eye contact, showing genuine concern and empathy for their plight. What happened next surprised not only the Johnson family, but also the neighbors and emergency responders who witnessed the scene. Elvis reached into his wallet and pulled out several $100s in cash, pressing the money into Robert's hand despite the man's protests. "This is just to get you through the next few days. Elvis said firmly but kindly. You need to take care of your family right now, and money shouldn't be something you have to worry about. When Robert tried to refuse the generous gift, Elvis placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and added, Sometimes we all need help, and sometimes we're in a position to provide it. Right now, I can help, and you need it. That's how it's supposed to work. But Elvis's kindness didn't stop with the immediate financial assistance. He spent the next hour talking with the Johnson family, learning about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams for the future. He discovered that Sarah loved to sing and had been participating in her school choir, that Michael dreamed of becoming a mechanic like his uncle, and that little Emma had a special fondness for stuffed animals, most of which had been lost in the fire. As the evening progressed and the fire department finished their work, Elvis made a decision that would profoundly impact the Johnson family for generations to come. He asked Robert and Mary if they would allow him to help them rebuild their lives in a more substantial way. When they looked at him with confusion and gratitude, he explained his vision. I want to do more than just help you get back to where you were, Elvis said. I want to help you get to where you deserve to be. He proposed setting up a trust fund for the children's education, helping them find better housing, and providing Mary with a new, professional-grade sewing machine that would allow her to expand her alteration business. That night, in a conversation that would remain secret for 50 years, Elvis made an extraordinary proposal to the Johnson family. He wanted to provide ongoing support that would give them opportunities they had never imagined possible. But there was one condition. They could never tell anyone about his involvement in their lives. Elvis explained his reasoning carefully and thoughtfully. He had learned from experience that when his charitable acts became public knowledge, they often created complicated situations for the recipients. People sometimes treated those he helped differently, with either resentment or excessive attention that made their lives difficult. Additionally, Elvis wanted his acts of kindness to be genuine expressions of care, not publicity opportunities. If this becomes a story in the newspapers, Elvis told them, it changes everything about what we're trying to accomplish here. I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything, and I don't want other people treating you differently because of what I've done. This should be between us, a family helping another family. Robert and Mary understood and agreed to Elvis's condition, though they struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what he was offering. The agreement they made that night would shape every major decision in their family's life for the next 5 decades, yet none of their friends, extended family members, or community would ever know the true source of their gradually improving circumstances. Elvis promised to work through intermediaries, lawyers, and financial advisors who would handle all the practical arrangements while maintaining the family's privacy and his own. He would check on their progress periodically, but always discreetly, ensuring that his involvement remained completely hidden from public view. Within a week of the fire, the Johnson family's life began to change in ways they had never dreamed possible. They received news that a charitable foundation had selected them as recipients of emergency housing assistance, providing them with a larger, safer apartment in a better neighborhood. The rent would be covered for the first year, giving Robert and Mary time to stabilize their finances and plan for the future. Mary received a brand new industrial sewing machine, along with professional-grade equipment that transformed her small alteration business into a legitimate tailoring service. The foundation also arranged for her to receive training in advanced sewing techniques and business management, skills that would prove invaluable as her client base expanded. For the children, opportunities began appearing that seemed too good to be true. Sarah was accepted into a prestigious music program that provided voice lessons and performance opportunities with established musicians. Michael gained access to vocational training programs that would prepare him for a career in automotive technology. Little Emma received educational support that ensured she would have every opportunity to succeed academically. Each opportunity was presented through official channels, schools, community organizations, and charitable foundations that appeared to have selected the Johnson family through standard application processes. No one suspected that a single benefactor was orchestrating these life-changing opportunities from behind the scenes. Robert found himself offered a better position at a different manufacturing plant, with higher wages and more stable employment prospects. The job came with health insurance that covered the entire family, something they had never been able to afford before. When he asked his new supervisor how he had been selected for the position, he was told that his work ethic and reliability had been strongly recommended by anonymous sources. As the years passed, the Johnson family's transformation continued in ways that amazed their friends and neighbors. They moved into an even nicer home in a suburban neighborhood known for its excellent schools and safe environment. Mary's tailoring business grew into one of the most respected custom clothing services in Memphis, with clients throughout the region seeking her expertise. Sarah's musical talents flourished under professional instruction, and she eventually received a full scholarship to study music at a prestigious university. Her voice teacher, who had been recommended by the same foundation that had originally supported her lessons, helped her develop the skills that would later lead to a successful career as a professional singer and music educator. Michael's interest in automotive technology was nurtured through specialized programs that most families in their original neighborhood could never have afforded. He received training at the finest technical schools, eventually opening his own automotive repair business that became known throughout Memphis for its quality and integrity. Emma, the youngest, benefited from educational opportunities that set her on a path toward academic excellence. She received tutoring, enrichment programs, and eventually scholarship assistance that enabled her to pursue higher education without the financial burden that had limited her parents' opportunities. Throughout all these years, Robert and Mary kept their promise to Elvis, never revealing the true source of their family's remarkable transformation. When friends and neighbors asked about their good fortune, they attributed it to hard work, faith, and the kindness of various charitable organizations. They never mentioned the name Elvis Presley, even when maintaining the secret became emotionally difficult. The family did receive occasional indirect contact from Elvis through the intermediaries who managed his charitable trust. They would receive updates about his career and personal life, along with expressions of interest in their progress and well-being. These communications reminded them that their secret benefactor continued to care about their lives and take pride in their achievements. Elvis's support for the Johnson family extended far beyond the initial emergency assistance and educational opportunities. As the family grew and faced new challenges, the support system he had created adapted to meet their evolving needs. When Robert suffered a workplace injury that threatened his ability to support his family, medical specialists and rehabilitation services appeared to help him recover completely. When Mary wanted to expand her business, but lacked the capital for a larger workspace and additional equipment, a small business loan became available through a community development program that seemed perfectly suited to her needs. The terms were generous, and the support included business mentoring that helped her navigate the challenges of entrepreneurship. As the children reached adulthood and started families of their own, educational trust funds appeared for the grandchildren, ensuring that the benefits of Elvis's generosity would extend to the next generation. These funds were structured to support everything from elementary education through college, creating opportunities that would break cycles of financial limitation for decades to come. Elvis also arranged for the family to receive regular, anonymous gifts that brought joy without creating suspicion. Every Christmas, packages would arrive containing thoughtful presents that demonstrated intimate knowledge of each family member's interests and needs. Birthdays were remembered with gifts that seemed to come from various sources, but were clearly chosen by someone who cared deeply about the recipients. The psychological impact of this sustained support went beyond the material benefits. The Johnson family developed a deep sense of security and confidence that enabled them to take risks and pursue dreams they might otherwise have considered unrealistic. They knew that someone believed in them enough to invest in their success, and this knowledge influenced every major decision they made. Maintaining Elvis's secret for 50 years was not without its challenges for the Johnson family. There were times when the weight of their knowledge felt overwhelming, particularly during periods when Elvis faced public difficulties or criticism. They watched his struggles with health and personal problems from a distance, wanting to express their gratitude and support, but bound by their promise to remain silent. Mary often told her husband how difficult it was to read negative stories about Elvis in newspapers and magazines when they knew firsthand the depth of his generosity and compassion. They had witnessed a side of Elvis that the public never saw, a man who quietly devoted significant resources to helping families like theirs without seeking recognition or publicity. During Elvis's final years, when his health problems became public knowledge, the Johnson family felt a profound sadness that they couldn't share with anyone else. They wanted to send messages of support and encouragement, but doing so would have violated the agreement that had made their transformed lives possible. When Elvis died in 1977, the Johnson family grieved privately for the loss of someone who had been their secret guardian angel for 4 years. They attended memorial services in Memphis, joining thousands of other mourners, but they couldn't share the personal loss they felt or the unique gratitude they carried for his impact on their lives. In the years following Elvis's death, the support system he had created continued to function exactly as he had designed it. The trust funds and financial arrangements he had established ensured that the Johnson family would continue to benefit from his generosity for decades to come, even though the man himself was no longer alive to see the results of his investment in their lives. As Mary Johnson entered her final years, the secret she had carried for 5 decades began to weigh heavily on her mind. She had watched her children and grandchildren build successful lives, knowing that none of it would have been possible without Elvis's intervention, yet she had never been able to share this crucial part of their family history. In her last months, Mary began to question whether maintaining the secret was still necessary or beneficial. Elvis had been gone for over 40 years, and the reasons he had originally given for anonymity seemed less relevant in the modern world. She wondered if her family deserved to know the full story of how their opportunities had been created and who had cared enough to make them possible. Mary also felt a deep desire to ensure that Elvis's memory was honored for the right reasons. While the world remembered him primarily as an entertainer, she knew him as a humanitarian whose private acts of kindness had transformed lives without seeking recognition. She wanted people to understand this aspect of his character, even if it meant breaking a promise she had kept faithfully for 50 years. During her final weeks, Mary discussed her feelings with her children, who had always wondered about the source of their family's remarkable good fortune. She hinted that there were things about their past that they didn't know. Important things that explained how their lives had unfolded so differently from what might have been expected given their circumstances. As her health declined, Mary made the decision that would finally bring the Johnson family's secret into the light. She called her children and grandchildren to her bedside for what she knew would be their final conversation, and she prepared to share the story that had shaped their lives for 50 years. On a quiet evening in early 2024, as Mary Johnson lay surrounded by her family in her final hours, she summoned the strength to tell them the story they had never heard. Her voice was weak but clear as she began to recount that night in 1973 when their apartment building caught fire and changed everything about their lives. "There's something you all need to know," she whispered, holding her daughter Sarah's hand. "Something your father and I promised to keep secret, but I think it's time for the truth." The family gathered closer, sensing that they were about to hear something significant. Mary told them about Elvis Presley's unexpected appearance that night, about his genuine concern for their family's welfare, and about the extraordinary proposal he had made to transform their lives. She explained how every opportunity they had received, every scholarship, every business loan, every moment of good fortune, had been orchestrated by Elvis through a network of intermediaries designed to maintain their privacy and his. The revelation stunned the family members who had built their adult lives on foundations they now realized had been provided by the king of rock and roll. Sarah, now a successful music teacher, understood for the first time why her musical education had been so comprehensive and well-funded. Michael, whose automotive business had thrived beyond his wildest dreams, realized that his technical training had been far more extensive than what most people could afford. Emma, who had become a successful educator herself, began to understand how her academic opportunities had been so perfectly aligned with her interests and abilities. The grandchildren learned that their college trust funds and educational support had been gifts from a man who had died before many of them were born, but who had cared enough to ensure their futures were secure. In the days following Mary's death, the Johnson family faced a difficult decision about what to do with the information she had shared. They felt a deep obligation to honor her memory and her final wishes, but they also struggled with the implications of breaking a 50-year-old promise to Elvis. After much discussion and reflection, they decided that Mary's instincts had been correct. It was time for the world to know about Elvis's private generosity and the profound impact he had on ordinary families like theirs. They felt that sharing their story would honor both Mary's memory and Elvis's legacy in a way that celebrated his humanity rather than exploiting it. The family contacted journalists and music historians, carefully choosing people they trusted to tell their story with sensitivity and respect. They wanted to ensure that the focus remained on Elvis's character and kindness, rather than on their own good fortune or the specific details of the financial support they had received. When the story was finally published, it created a sensation among Elvis fans and the general public. Here was concrete evidence of the depth of Elvis's private generosity, a side of his personality that had been hidden from public view for 50 years. The story provided a counterbalance to some of the more sensational aspects of Elvis's public image, showing him as a man who quietly devoted significant resources to helping others without seeking recognition. The revelation of Elvis's secret support for the Johnson family inspired other recipients of his private charity to come forward with their own stories. Over the following months, dozens of families across the South shared accounts of mysterious scholarships, anonymous business loans, and unexpected opportunities that they now realized had come from Elvis Presley. These stories painted a picture of a man who had systematically used his wealth and influence to create opportunities for people who might otherwise never have escaped poverty or achieved their dreams. The scope of his private charitable work was far more extensive than anyone had imagined, touching hundreds of lives across multiple generations. The Johnson family's story became a catalyst for a broader understanding of Elvis's character and values. Music historians began researching other examples of his private generosity, uncovering a pattern of quiet philanthropy that had been hidden from public view for decades. Biographers started incorporating these discoveries into more complete portraits of Elvis as both an artist and a human being. For the Johnson family members, sharing their story brought a sense of closure and completion that they hadn't expected. They were finally able to express publicly the gratitude they had carried privately for 50 years, and they could honor Elvis's memory in a way that celebrated his best qualities. The trust funds and financial arrangements that Elvis had established continued to support the family's next generation, ensuring that his investment in their future would continue to pay dividends for years to come. The Johnson grandchildren and great-grandchildren would benefit from educational opportunities and financial security that originated with a chance encounter on a Memphis street in 1973. Mary Johnson's deathbed revelation about Elvis's secret generosity to her family illuminated a side of the king of rock and roll that the public had never fully understood. Her story proved that behind the fame, the performances, and the public persona was a man who genuinely cared about the welfare of ordinary people and was willing to invest his resources in their success without seeking recognition or reward. The 50-year secret that Mary and Robert Johnson kept demonstrated their own integrity and respect for Elvis's wishes, even when maintaining that secret required them to downplay their gratitude and hide the true source of their family's transformation. Their story became a testament to the power of private charity and the profound impact that one person's generosity can have across multiple generations. Elvis's support for the Johnson family represented just one example of his broader commitment to using his success to create opportunities for others. The careful structure he created to maintain anonymity while providing ongoing support showed his understanding that true charity focuses on the recipient's needs rather than the donor's recognition. As the Johnson family's story spread throughout the Elvis fan community and beyond, it added a new dimension to how people understood and remembered the king of rock and roll. While his musical legacy remained paramount, stories like theirs revealed the depth of his character and his commitment to making a positive difference in the lives of people who would never have the opportunity to repay his kindness. The monument to humanity that Mary Johnson described in her final words was built not from stone or metal, but from acts of compassion that created ripple effects lasting decades. Elvis's investment in the Johnson family's future became an investment in the future of everyone whose lives they touched, creating a legacy of kindness that extended far beyond the original gesture. In the end, Mary Johnson's decision to break 50 years of silence ensured that Elvis Presley would be remembered not only as a revolutionary musician, but also as a man whose private acts of generosity quietly transformed lives and created opportunities for people who might otherwise have been forgotten by history.